Have you ever been so scared of something that you just wanted to run home and tell your mom and dad and your parents because you knew that they were the one thing that could make you feel comfortable and at home and feel better about your situation? Well, in this case, Dave Pelzer could not do that because his mother was who he was afraid of and who he was deathly scared of. This is a book, The Child Called It, by Dave Pelzer. And this is Dave Pelzer as a 4-year-old. This book was written by Dave Pelzer about his childhood life from the age of 4 to 12. And this goes on and talks about his tragic life events that he went through and he survived. He was abused by his alcoholic mother. This abuse went from emotional to physical and would change depending on the father's presence. The father was seen as Dave's protector. When dad was home, there was no abuse. When dad was gone, the abuse would glorify. Dad started to disappear, and he would take longer and longer vacations to where he stopped coming home. That is when the abuse grew and got worse. The abuse went from hiding in a corner by putting his nose in a corner for hours and hours of a day to not being able to eat for a couple days to being put in a gas chamber, which is what the mom would call it. She would put him in the garage with ammonia and different chemicals and make him sit out there and inhale it all. And then one of the more intense ones is a quote that I chose. On page 41, it says, "Mother then ordered me to climb up onto the stove and lie on the flames so she could watch me burn." This is a very graphic quote. And the reason why I chose it was to show the audience and you guys the intensity of this abuse. It wasn't, I got spanking with a belt. She made him lie on a stove while she just watched him burn. And the fact that a 4-year-old had to go through this and survived it and is able to write a biography about themselves is just remarkable. And the reason why it's called A Child Called It, which leads me to another quote on page 141, "It was impossible. I dumped the pieces of the letter in the trash, wishing my life would end. I truly believed at that moment that death would be better than my prospects for any kind of happiness. I was nothing but an it." His mother didn't see him as a son or a child or a boy. She saw him as her slave. She referred to him as it, no matter if it was a good day for her or a bad day for her. She wished and told him this plenty of times that she wished that he was dead. And so this book was it was very graphic in a way that it had to be. To be able to visualize and understand his story was one of the worst cases in the 1960s when he was born. So probably around 1964 was when his case was, examined, and this was known, his specific case was known as the worst case of child abuse in California. And just knowing that a 4-year-old, even going on to age 12, that someone had to go through this, and the fact that they were able to still live on and still grow from these horrible experiences just is admirable. And I feel that to know that if someone so young could have such a descriptive mind, and the reason why I say descriptive is from another page, another quote that really stuck to me. It's on page 133. Says, "Inside, my soul became so cold. I hated everything. I even despised the sun, for I knew I would never be able to play in its warm presence. I cringed with hate whenever I heard other children laughing as they played outside. My stomach coiled whenever I smelled food that was about to be served to somebody else, knowing it wasn't for me." I feel, and the reason why I chose those 3 specific quotes were to show how the intensity of the abuse grew. And it also showed how Dave grew as a child and matured as a child, and how his thoughts became more and more negative and then started to become positive. He says in his one last quote that shows how it turns to a positive in his mind, and how his inner strength takes over. Was It says, "Mother can beat me all she wants, but I haven't let her take away my will to somehow survive." This quote was just mind-blowing to me as well, that someone so young is going through something and has no one, absolutely no one, can't even confide in his own mother because she's the one abusing him. That quote specifically is about inner strength, and that brings me into some activities that I would do. Now, this book, the reading level is 5.9. I would definitely use this in a high school setting. Specifically, 9th or 12th. I would try to maybe do it in the oldest grade that I could, just because this book contains a lot of content that's really hard to, understand. But I also feel that even in 9th grade, this is a type of bullying. So I feel that this would be a great entrance into, you're in a new school, bullying. This is why you can't do it. This is a form of bullying. And, you could do kind of like a first week activity, just talking about getting to know everyone and not bullying, and then maybe bring this into the first literature book that you guys read. Something like that to kind of set the scene of, this is a zero bullying tolerance, so this is the effects that it could have on someone. Something more content related, that before reading the book, you could talk about what this book is about and themes. So maybe each child or each student could explain what inner strength means to them. So they could give a definition, and then they can share it to the class, or you guys can just post them all on the board, and then talk about the different examples or of the meanings of it. And then also you could have them each maybe write their own journal entry to talk about when they had to use their inner strength at a point in their lives that they felt they wouldn't have been able to get through it without. Another one was that this book is classified as an autobiography and a memoir. So you could talk about what a memoir is and introduce that and have the students create their own memoir. And another part that could be maybe history related was that this book, Dave Pelzer was born in the 60s. And there were a lot of changes that were happening in the United States during the 60s, like the hippie movement, counterculture, women's rights, and psychoactive drugs. So the students could maybe do a history project on the time of the 60s and maybe show how this is maybe related to how and why the mother was abusive and maybe why the father wasn't a parent in the life. But that is my book talk. I really encourage you all to read Dave Pelzer's book. He has 2 other books, and another one goes on from 12 to a little bit older, and it's called The Lost Boy. And then he has one of who he is now, and it's called A Man Named Dave. So I really encourage you to look into Dave Pelzer and get to know more about this type of genre. And I hope you enjoy.